Please join me in welcoming Michael W. Twitty.
Thank you. So Leah told me that this was sold out, and I'm just like, nah. I have folks I grew up, went to high school with here. I have friends from IG. I got, cousins that went to Africa with. I got people I've never met before, but this is always amazing, and it's a thrill to do this in the DC area. In DC, where I was born, my home, my occupied home. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it real. And I'm gonna keep it black. And a little Jewish and a little Southern. And a lot gay. So, you came for a thrill and I came to give it. But this is, I walked into this room remembering that I hadn't been in this room. I mean, I've been in this building, but I haven't been in this room since I was a teenager. And I am 48 years old now. And I'm walking in here going, wow. No, it hasn't changed, but it's something, there's something about being a Washingtonian and going to places that you went to as a child or you went to as a teenager, or when you were partying down the streets in Southeast, when tracks was still a thing. Shh. If you know, you know. You got there 8 o'clock and you stayed till 8. Why? Because it was $5 from 8 to 10. Yes. And you couldn't get no cab until it was daylight, so you might as well just stay and have a good time. Having said that, yeah, it's great to be here. People think that I'm from North Carolina or Georgia or Atlanta or New York. I'm like, look, I have half smoke written all over me. Go-go, and I don't do mambo sauce, but it's still part of home. And I'm a Marylander too. And if you don't say Maryland, you ain't from Maryland. And you got to put Old Bay on everything. So there are requirements to this culture. So without further ado, I have a lot to talk about in a very short amount of time. And the piece that Leah and I talked about months ago about horchata, if you're not familiar, horchata is actually 2-3 different drinks. And in the piece that I did for the blog, I did something I really don't often do, which is like put it out there that, all these cultures were a part of this one drink. And horchata, tamarind, tamarindo, horchata, roselle hibiscus, soblo. They're all of these and more, anything based on ginger, they all came through the traded enslaved people from West Central Africa to the Americas. And then there was further development once they hit the mezcla, the mixture of cultures in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's something that we don't often take seriously when we go into eat and drink. We often take for granted that we have all of these things that have these layers and levels of culture. And I think that's why we're in the mess we're in right now. Because when you respect the ancestors and the people behind the food, not just in the past, the people who are here today, laboring, developing, growing. I didn't plan to bring a show and tell, but you got a garden full of stuff, right? So this little tray that we put together in a matter of seconds, my husband has given me reparations by being on the garden in the hot sun. I love you. Nothing like that, but sometimes it is. So this is an example. This is just an example. A number of years ago, I was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I was so excited because I could do a program there. They didn't pay that good, but I don't care. It was it felt special. And other than the fact that one security guards rolled up on me during my presentation and was like, "Get back from that painting. You're too close." In front of 75 people. I was like, girl, bye. But it was a painting, and watch this. The painting was from the early 19th century, and it was based off of a plantation in Prince George's County, Maryland. And it was a collection, when you grow up and you see still life, right? Still life is like nonsense. Because you're like, okay, great, somebody painted some fruit. All right, cool, that's nice. I can do that. No, you can't. You remember that art that was up on the refrigerator for years? With the grapes, you did the purple, and you did the little circles, and you did the weird apple. And so, what was the family? Help me, I'm having a middle-aged moment. What was the family of the Peels? It was one of the Peel brothers. Thank you, ancestors, on point. And the painting showed corn, muskmelon, probably Anne Arundel muskmelon. The corn wasn't just any corn, it was like a dent corn. Dent or a flint corn, probably a dent corn. And it had okra, cowhorn okra, some pole beans, other things, and some chili peppers and tomatoes. Big, beautiful, like this guy. Brandywine, right? And of course, these get much redder. And it just showed a slice of life. But I looked at that painting and I said automatically, this isn't some painting from some grand whatever. This is a painting, for those of us older to remember, a Polaroid, if you will, of the truck, the food, the produce from an enslaved African American's garden. This isn't just any old whatever. This comes from a very specific place and could have been, anywhere in this area, but it was very specifically from Prince George's County, Maryland. I forget whose plantation it was, but it's such a gorgeous painting. It's sitting over there in the Met. And apparently I got too close to it. I'm still bitter, sorry. But I mean, here we have, Cherokee purple. You guys love this guy. Although, however, it splits often too much. Or those of us of Italian heritage, including me, haha, surprise, paste tomato, right? Old Virginia tomato, Mountain View, more of a kind of a 20th century heirloom. This one is so special. It gets really brilliantly red. But if I brought in like the really red ones, they'd be too mushy to show, right? You only get a short shelf life on these. But this is my favorite. This is plat du Haiti. It is what it sounds like. It is a Haitian tomato. It's one of the few tomatoes that we have that have an explicit Afro-Caribbean and African-American history. And it was brought to the mainland United States to several different places. Philadelphia and Baltimore, Charleston, South Carolina, and New Orleans. Why? Because Haitian immigrants, that's the polite way of saying it, who were brought here or came here at the time of the Haitian Revolution, brought this and several different varieties of okra with them, in addition to several herbs and things. And so we can't forget that we, Black Americans, are a global people. E pluribus unum, out of many one. Not only the folks who came here originally, but also the people who were in the Caribbean, who then remixed with the people on the mainland, and Afro-Latino people who came here and remixed and recreated salsa and hip-hop and all of it. So I am a proud Pan-Africanist. I'm sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings, but having been to the continent, hi cousin, we have, we've seen these things with our own two eyes. Speaking of the nation of the Republic of Benin, remember this guy? So, I'm gonna tell y'all something that you gotta swear to secrecy. You didn't hear it from me. Remember Live in Color? You ain't heard it from me? I don't like to gossip. So this is a small, he came in the day from the garden. He said, look, and I was so happy because I was like, upset because the okra didn't show up. We have like 20 okra plants, and I'm like, come on. So finally today, okra day. First 2 okras at the garden. It's gonna go to my ancestor altar. And when we were coming back from Benin, see, first of all, I'll tell you, in Africa, they don't make change. You hand them a big bill, that's what you're gonna get back. Thank you for buying several pounds of okra. But I'm not trying to get several pounds of okra. I'm just trying to buy it so I can see it a little knick-knack. Oh no, you gave me 20 francs, you're gonna get 20 francs worth of okra. So, my brother, my sister there, they come back dollars. Just as the Oyimbo woman, the two-bob woman, so some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm glad some of you don't, is walking by with her dog, the Yovo woman, and all of a sudden my bag falls off of the carousel. And out of my bag falls 20 franc worth of okra that I forgot in my bag. And you know what, Dulles, they don't play when you come back from Africa and Asia and stuff. They be like, you got a goat, you got a cow, what you got in your bag? You got some flowers, you got some cocaine, what you got? And of course you go, I don't have anything. No, not at all. One of the sisters, one of our other trips, she went, and next thing, she's also a Washingtonian. They asked, have you been to a farm? And she goes, oh yeah, there were cows, and goes, they detained her for 30 minutes, right? And here I am, all kind of contraband that I forgot about. Now, honestly, I swear to you, I forgot. I was not thinking about growing some okra. But ain't God good all the time? Because guess what? The okra fell out all over the floor. Miss Lady and the dog came right by, did not see me. I just had time to scoop it back up in my bag, put it away, and said, all right. Then stuff starts to mold, and I'm a procrastinator because of ADHD, and next thing I know, I was like, let me get this okra out of this bag before it turns into a mess. I dried it, and next year I said, let me plant this in the ground. So this is what they call in Fon, which is one of my ancestral languages, fevi. Fevi is the word for okra. They call it fetsui in Ewe, unkruma in Twi, and okra in Igbo. So I'm all them people. And of course, kanja in Wolof, kanjo in Manding. You gotta know the words. The minute you know the words, you put them back in your mouth, you essentially reverse a 400-year-old curse that says you deserve amnesia and not your heritage. So that's a big part of it. And no, by the way, that was not carrying anybody's hair. That didn't happen in the Middle Passage. That did, however, happen in the Quilombos in Latin America, where there was a situation where people were braiding things, but didn't happen in the Middle Passage. It happened in the Americas. And probably only documented in Colombia, Suriname, and Guyana. But having said that, oh, this guy's fun too, sorry. Case knife pole bean, you can tell why. So this would have been the kind of pole bean that our ancestors in the Chesapeake would have, made for their special dinner. It's not a Kentucky Wonder. It's not a bush bean. It is called a case knife pole bean for that exact reason. And you got to catch them fast too. And growing these things gives me a sense of peace, especially in this moment, where our peace is being interrupted every single day by the trauma of the news, which is produced by other things. I ain't got to talk about it. You know who I'm talking about. You know the system that I'm talking about. And the fact of the matter is that those of us who are from here, we were talking about this on the elevator, it has always been a privilege and a PowerPoint. I realized this when I started traveling all over the country for presentations, going to Chicago and Detroit and other Rust Belt cities and noticing something. As a Washingtonian, well, back in our day, Pat, it was $1.10 to ride the Metro from Wheaton to the Smithsonian stop. $1.10. I'm begging my mother, I don't have the money. $1.10. Now it's like something else. I don't even want to think about it, right? But you could get on that train and come to a Folger, come to the Smithsonian, come to the Library of Congress, but you had to get permission from your principal, written permission, have a library card. But you know what, you could still do it. You didn't have to cross rivers and go through gentrified areas and all other nonsense like my cousins in other cities, where going to the museum wasn't, first of all, the museum wasn't free. And you had to do that work to get there, and it was hard, and it was difficult. And not to mention being a young kid of color. But for me, as long as I had that $1.10 each way, I could get on the metro, walk up the hill in Wheaton, Maryland, come out here, learn for free, and go back home and become the man that I've become now. And we have to remember that. Many young women, many young men, many of our siblings need to have that opportunity to come to these places untouched by censorship and have an education of their own. That is the jewel, the benefit of living in this beautifully multicultural community we call the Washington, D.C. area, or the DMV, which whenever time I go to LA, I don't like the DMV. No, baby, not the DMV where you, I lived in LA for almost 6 months. That was enough. I love it, but it ain't home. It ain't home. I love it. But as I say this, there was this anthropologist I was introduced to when I was in middle school. I think it was in Sligo. And his name was Ralph Linton. And one of our teachers, we really liked this young woman. She was a really good teacher. And social studies was always my thing. And as we called it, world studies back in MoCo. World studies, okay. So this essay was called Body Rituals of the Nasarima. If you know the trick, don't say it out loud. So the Nasarima are these people who had this holy mouth man, and he would like reach into your mouth with implements and mess around up here, and you'd have to go home and put the medicines that you were given in your sacred box, and this crazy essay that made you think, oh my God, I never want to be a Nasarima. Well, what is Nasarima? American spelled backwards. Right? And this is during the 50s and 60s, Ralph Linton is writing this essay. And the same thing with the horchata piece. It's like, there are all these different pieces. He wrote another beautiful essay to talked about the Americans, the average morning of the American. And of course, he could have gone way further, but we were still living in a very Eurocentric world. And so he talks about how the average American, prays to a God that came from Israel, Palestine. This American drinks coffee that comes from Ethiopia, and the American eats this food that is from the Scandinavia and the Dutch that's covered in Iroquois maple syrup, and blah, 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 blah. Kind of exposing people to the reality, the realization that every day you get up and participate in the world, you're doing so with the whole of humanity engaged with you. And of course, it could have been a lot of different things. Now, it could have been several different cultures living in the same house as part of the same family, right? But that just like with the horchata thing, right? It's like, horchata is not possible just because of the Spanish or Portuguese. Absolutely not. The Moors, the Hausa, the Wolof, Sephardic Jews, Arabs, Persians, all are involved in the creation of moving this drink with heavy roots in the Middle East, Southwest Asia, Northern Africa, and West Africa, through the Iberian culture, across the ocean, through the culture that came from West Central Africa to indigenous people in that same region, through the Mezcla culture, the Mestizo culture that we know today. It took a lot of different people with a lot of different narratives and lives. That word sonder, everybody has their own universe and their own perception of the world, and that's unique to them, and it will never be another. We have to consider that. See, culinary history in and of itself, I'm a rare bird for many reasons, but the fact that, first of all, culinary history wouldn't even been a thing if it wasn't for women's studies. Because women started to ask the question, why is food only mentioned in history when it's the bread lines, or who has access to wheat fields, or men in power? When it's really women who are marketing, cooking, selling, conceiving of that food for thousands of years, and are also seen as part of the family tree of food. What does that mean? In Southeast Asia, rice isn't just a grain, it's your mother. Same thing when it comes to parts of West African mythologies. Indigenous people in the Americas who grew corn. One of the Cherokees said it was the corn mother. And it's always this weird narrative, I'm uncomfortable with it, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's this weird narrative where the grain mother is killed and brought back to life and provides sustenance. In New Guinea, sugarcane is a male ancestor. Among the Igbo, yams are part of the family. The Hawaiians call kalo, taro, our brother, part of the ohana. So in these cultures that a lot of us come from or are privileged to be allied to, the food is not just an ingredient. The food is part of your family tree. It's a part of your civilization to the point where if it wasn't, you wouldn't be here. And so those sacred stories are not built to entertain. They're there to inculcate respect. So you never forget that this thing that you are ingesting and planting and harvesting and honoring is a part of you and your family tree. Which is why I talked about horchata being, we share the same heritage. Because the rice aspect. And not all horchata is rice. Some horchata is made from chufa, also known as tiger nut, which is very important I know today in Ghana, in northern Nigeria, in the Sahel region of West Africa, which is the part where the desert meets the savanna in West Africa, as well as the Nile River Valley. It's sacred. It's a part of our story. And by recovering these stories and being a part of these stories and telling our children and our students and our young people these stories, what we are actually doing is giving resurrection to rice and to corn and yams and once we use the European name, kalo and other things in a way they might not otherwise be. It can always be just something you eat. You know, a certain person who I don't want to mention his name had a little incident a couple years ago at a Mexican restaurant. Why he was eating there, I don't know why. But this same person was involved in the theft of children from their parents. And for him to have the audacity to go into a space where the food was prepared and served. Now, mind you, when we say Mexican food, I ain't talking about no daggone Taco Bell. I ain't talking about no Chipotle either. And I respect the regional Tex-Mex and California culture. I respect that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a cuisine that is 10,000 years old. Where even before those people even existed, there were these careful maneuvers to make these crops happen. Right? Teosinte starts off as this little weed in a field with seeds on it. And then someone had to carefully take that plant and pass down the dream of having an entire crop. And that becomes maize, right? Which over half the world relies on for food in some form or another. So you're disrespecting these mathematical geniuses, these, doctors, these natural, ethnobotanical experts, these builders of great pyramids, by interrupting the family and tradition and culture. But you good with eating their food, though. Kind of like the people, when they had a Klan rally in North Carolina, and the Klan was hungry, so they needed some food. And if you black, you already know who they went to for the food. I ain't gotta tell you, because you already know. They actually went and put a massive order in a black soul food restaurant, just like the old days. Only time they had to pay for it. Point being is that we are braided like a challah forever. And no one does, no cultural war maneuvers, no attempts at amnesia or censorship are going to change that. We can't go back because we can't. It's not an option. Check your low ancestry DNA for one. And what I've always wanted to do, but it takes some planning and work, is walk into a crowd like this and have Henry Louis Gates pop out and go, okay, these are your cousins. and part of the room goes, oh, all right. They did that in some kind of viral video from England where they had these people come together. They'd done weeks worth of DNA testing. And some people in the room who didn't think they would ever be relatives or talk to each other were like, whoa, I'm your relative? Muslim woman, Jewish man, yeah, you all are not that far apart. And and other people, oh wow, I'm from this cell, you'll get it, that beautiful sense of nuance and confusion and trouble and peace. That's what this does for me. That's why our garden has become a refuge in this time, because it's about life. And I have to think about, because it's my work, right? Think about those paintings of all those fruits and vegetables and foods. We went to the museum in Amsterdam. You know what I'm talking about, the big one. Thank you. And it's like, and guys, it was the same day. They had a whole exhibit on Vermeer. And by the way, if you go to Amsterdam and you don't buy your stuff ahead of time, you ain't gonna see it. They were like, nope, no new tickets. And I was so mad because I was like, I wanted to see Girl with a Pearl Earring. And she was right there, and we didn't get to go see her because nope. But you go into the main halls with Dutch art, particularly from like the exploration era, right? And you see these paintings full of food, because it's not just food, it's a Protestant conversation with the viewer about mortality, about enjoying life, but at the same point in time, understanding the value of labor. That's all in the Dutch artist's mind. And every time you look at the paintings, you'll always see these Christological elements. Sausages or fish crossing each other. That's part of it. So when you're a culinary historian, these paintings become a lot of fun because you go, wow, those grapes look different. What species of fish is that, right? What cut of meat is that? You start to look at the painting and learn from it, and it starts talking to you. Or even Roman mosaics. Sometimes there's these beautiful depictions of specific types of stone fruit. I used to this elder. He taught me so much. He says, I've flown to Italy, and they asked me to say what the different fruit is. And these are fruits and varieties that go back 2,000, 1,500 years. And it's all of a sudden becomes an act of preservation, but also communion. That we and them aren't that far apart, not that different despite time and life and death. In Jewish tradition, we don't see those being borders. We're still talking to our rabbis from 3,000 years ago. That's right. We're still like in a chat with them. That's Judaism, a never-ending chat, arguing about how stale matzah can be. One of my favorite conversations when I used to teach Hebrew school was having the kids argue about, is a house still kosher for Passover if a mouse brings in a crumb of bread? And I took them from like completely like, this is garbage, to actually getting very passionate and angry. How much bread was it? Was it it's Passover? How about it? If it's a macaroon. And I said, see, you are your people are you, and this is in you. This is about you. Or when I went to Nigeria, this was the moment for me. Igbo village, a festival. I'm literally walking through the living pages of Things Fall Apart, and there's these big old pots, right? And I was such an asshole, man, because I walked in there and I was like literally like, oh, I know you can't believe this. I'm a man from America, and I cook in pots like this at historic sites. We don't have that. Though I don't know what the woman said to me in Igbo, but it's a quick tonal language. She looked me up and down and she went, And I was like, man, you ain't had to like read me like that. I didn't know exactly what she meant. You gay as hell, of course you cook. And you big? Oh, baby. You ain't got to come here and tell me about how you can cook and you a dude and whatnot. Oh, no. I know you know how to make some food. and keep a man happy. I didn't need a translator for that. But at the same point in time, I'm sitting there and I'm watching. By the way, she gave me a big hug afterwards. She was like, "Come here, baby." But it was, what us that love sometimes is reading somebody. Heard? And so it was just like that experience of going into the gardens the first time. And I had told people here at historic sites, I said, you're not doing these gardens of the enslaved right, because they were grown together, much like Native Americans. They were grown to be like an ecosystem. They were not grown to be linear in spaces. And I took these pictures in Africa and they were showing me, oh yeah, this is the way it is. And I said, wait a minute, that's Nchanwu. How do you know that word? I said, it's Nchanwu, it's basil. And they're like, yeah. I said, why do you plant it there? He says, oh, we plant the edge of the field because it keeps off the pests. And also, if you rub it on your skin, it'll keep the mosquitoes away. So both of my grandmothers, watch this, Lisa, both of my grandmothers, they were about 10, 12 years apart. One from Alabama and one from Virginia. Said the same thing on separate occasions. We plant basil by the front door to keep evil out of our house. Okay? When I was in Senegal, basil by the front. Ghana, basil by the wall. And by the way, in Ghana, they call basil the thing that makes the chicken dance. Because you put it in a pot of chicken stew and it's yummy, it's tasty, right? It makes it dance in your system, right? Brings it back to life. And I just thought about this. What kind of act of telephone across the transatlantic slave trade goes from the basil's medicinal and acts as a pest control element to this basil will keep evil out of your house? What is the most common murderer on earth after humankind? The mosquito. That's it. And so you think about that mental gymnastics of survival and creativity and resistance that makes you go, yeah, let's keep the evil out your house. So from the very start, we've had basil, because I want to keep that tradition going, basil and bottle trees and other elements to make sure people understood what kind of house this was. It's the mezuzah on the front door. It's the hamsa. It's the hot comb that my great-grandmother, grandmother, and mother used, positioned like a mezuzah when you enter the kitchen. It's my grandmother's church fan up against a fan I got from Ghana. It's the things that make us realize why the kitchens we cook in and the tables we eat from are uniquely ours.